Hey guys, I want you to listen to this very carefully.
President-elect Donald Trump's election win has been extremely profitable for Elon Musk, whose net worth has grown by $276 billion since November 5th. Steve, what are you looking at?
So not only is Elon Musk maybe the second or even the first most powerful man in Washington, he's also the richest man in the world. Musk has Tesla shares. He's got SpaceX. He's got Tesla options, which are just another piece of this puzzle. And then he's got a bunch of stuff that looks pretty small here, but it's $7 billion, it's $13 billion, it's $25 billion in OpenAI, in X, as we know, in some futuristic things called the Boring Company and Neuralink, all of which have gone up enormously in value. And so, as you said in your lead-in, what's happened? His net worth has gone up 135% since the election, $276 billion. He's now worth $480 billion, the wealthiest man in the world, half of that roughly since the election alone.
And Steve, you mentioned this with SpaceX and NASA, but conflicts of interest really concern a lot of people. If he is running this so-called Doge agency, could he not have the power to say, pull federal funding or pull federal contracts from a competing EV company, for example?
Yeah, this is sort of so far off the fairway, you're never even going to find this ball.
Yeah.
I mean, when you work in the government, and I did this, you are subject to rigid conflict of interest rules. You are required to divest yourself of anything that could prove a conflict in your work for the government. Obviously, he's not going to divest all this stuff. He's not even a government employee, which is a whole nother legal question as to what he can or should be doing. And so this is another classic example of kind of the swamp coming to Washington, and Trump and his people doing whatever they feel like, regardless of what's appropriate, regardless of what even the law is in some cases, perhaps.
I wrote a book, and it's right here. It's called The Man Who Sold America. It actually did pretty well, the New York Times bestseller. Maybe the sequel to the book should be called The Man Who Sold America to Elon Musk, because apparently that's what Donald Trump did. Good luck out there.
Welcome to another edition of Let It Be Known. Well, this morning, Bonnie Willis is off the case. A appellate court in Georgia has kicked off the district attorney from the Trump case. We'll talk about the future of that case, the future of Bonnie Willis, with our Amir Shaw of the Atlanta Daily World, and Lauren Burke will weigh in on that as well. Lauren is also going to join us and weigh in on the shutdown, the Elon Musk government shutdown, we should call it. So some big news out of Georgia. An appeals court has ruled that Fani Willis has to be removed from the case against President-elect Donald Trump. Some may be surprised, some may not, but we're going to get some expertise on this with Amir Shah from Atlanta. Amir, this was it something that you was expecting? What's the latest?
Yeah, so what's interesting is that I've followed this case for over a year since it occurred, and I got an opportunity to interview DA Fani Willis prior to putting in an indictment against Donald Trump. I think at that time it was like 17 other co-defendants regarding the 22 election and the attempt to steal the 2020 election, particularly in Fulton County. And in terms of just her case, she had a smoking gun. She pretty much had, out of all the cases that Trump
Yep.
faced over the past few years. She was the one district attorney or an attorney who had the smoking gun against Trump. And so she had a really great case. And today, the Georgia Court of Appeals, they decided to disqualify Fani Willis from and her office from continuing to indict this case. So what that means is uh, another attorney would have to pick up this case maybe in another county, or the state attorney could basically just take this case and then dismiss it. If the state attorney gets it, then it is going to get dismissed.
And yeah, we're gonna get more into that too because we're gonna see if this thing will continue. Because the next thing too, Amir, is that there is still an appeal as to whether or not the case itself will be going forward. But what was the specific improprieties cited by the appeals court that led to the removal of DA Willis from the election interference case?
Yeah, of course. So a few months back, if we think about last February, January and February, one of the attorneys of one of the defendants on the case, the RICO case, they brought out that Fani Willis had a relationship with prosecutor Nathan Wade, and they wanted to make some type of claim that Fani Willis benefited from that financially for in her hiring of Nathan Wade, and that he paid for these lavish trips, things of that nature. It was a bunch of
Right.
smoke and mirrors, and the judge he basically dismissed the attempt to get her disqualified initially. But it was enough to distract, it was enough to delay, it was enough to kind of put some type of, you know, just second guessing in the air of
Mhm.
Fani Willis. And people who hated her or were on the side of Trump, it was just another reason for them to attack her. But it was really much to do about nothing. And basically, what we're seeing now is that the Georgia Court of Appeals, which is majority Republican, we gotta talk about the political side of what's happening. Majority Republican, they sided with Trump. Trump, uh,
No
Trump's
surprise, right?
lawyers today said that that she was disqualified from furthering to prosecute this case.
And so, basically, and we many of us who followed the case know that one of the major points of angst or anger, anyway, was getting inside a black woman's bedroom, basically. Um, have you heard anything since this ruling from DA Willis?
Well, it's likely that she will fight this because one thing that's very interesting is that there was a dissenting judge on the appeals court. I think his name is Judge Benjamin Land, and what Benjamin Land basically said is that the Georgia Court of Appeals overstepped its boundaries. He said that this is something that has never happened before, and so from a legal standpoint, if you're going by from a legal precedence, this is something that just doesn't happen, right? And so it's what Finding Willis is possibly going to do is take this to a higher court. Uh, just if you just go
Right.
by the law, this doesn't happen.
And that's
So
been
we
the
know
point.
that this appears to be
Yeah,
going.
and that's been the point, right? Going by the law. But the other problem, and I don't know that we can lay this at Fonnie Willis's feet as much as we can at the federal prosecutors, the special counsel, but this going after Trump so close to the election, filing these charges, basically in 2023 and the election is 2024, the federal cases, right? Now, she had to give way to the other cases. And you, as you said, a lot of people saw this as perhaps the most damaging case against Trump, and a case that really could stick. Um, she was already basically what I'm saying is she was already in a fighting from behind, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she had a lot going against her in terms of just trying to take down a former president. I think anytime you try to take someone down that's so powerful, you're going to have a lot of pushback. But I think, one thing that she did is that she did her homework before she even brought this case to indict it. Like she really did her due diligence in terms of making sure that she had everything lined up in terms of co-defense. Like, you understand this, not just in Fulton County. If you read the indictment, this goes down to Coffee County, like a lot of rural areas in Georgia, that there was a lot of interference that was taking place on behalf of Donald Trump. And so Fonnie was really making sure that she had a steady case before she brought it to a grand jury. And once she did that, it was all go. And as we saw that, once she put out the indictments, Trump actually had to. He was booked into the
His
Fulton
only
County
mugshot.
Jail, and yeah, had a mug shot. And like I said, she had the smoking gun, which is the evidence of Donald Trump making a phone call to several people in Georgia, particularly Secretary of State, stating that he needed 11,000 votes. So, any jury would have convicted Trump based on the rule of law.
Generally, they talk about the public trust. How might this decision affect the perception of the legal system's ability to handle cases like this? Political figures. Obviously, the president being the biggest political figure that you can have ensnared in something like this. But I mean, does public trust even play a role anymore?
I mean, you look at it like in terms of just what Trump has been able to get away with over the past 4 years is amazing. I mean, he got away from, he got out of the January 6th thing where we saw, but the entire world saw that he made a speech, said that he was going to beat them in the Capitol, and then all of a sudden chaos happens at the Capitol, and nothing happens to Trump. We saw that on record that he, not just in the state of Georgia, but in several states in 2020, he attempted to interfere with elections on multiple occasions. And so we've seen that this guy has gotten away with so much from a legal standpoint. I think the public is going to look at it like, wow, this is a country that doesn't really live by what it says. I think you talk about the perception of what the America wants to wants to be perceived as versus the reality of what it is. I think the public will lose some type of trust when it says, okay, there are certain people who can get away with being criminals and nothing will
Yeah.
happen. So yes.
And you mentioned too these judges, these Republican judges, but what does it say, if anything, that Georgia has this Republican governor, and we keep hearing about pardons and things of that nature, but Brian Kemp has not in any way of late, at least to our knowledge, maybe you have better knowledge, indicated that he was leaning toward a pardon for Trump in this case.
Yeah, I don't think Kemp uh, was going to get to that point, right? And I don't even know if Kemp would have the
Well, he's the
power
governor; it's a state case.
to it's a state case, but I don't. You're right. He didn't say anything in terms of that he would pardon or try to interfere with any. Like he pretty
And
much
what does
stayed
that
away from it
say? How
in
does what does
terms
that
of.
speak to the evidence of this, if anything? That you had a Republican governor
Oh yeah, I
who
mean,
stayed out of it.
yeah, you have to understand that along with Trump, there are like 14 other people who were defendants, right?
Yeah, we tend to
So there's
forget that.
14 other people who have damaging things. And also she has several plea deals. And so you have people who already took plea deals and decided to say, okay, because of the damaging evidence, that they will go ahead and take a plea deal and decide to testify for the state. She had several key witnesses who took those deals, and so you're right. I mean, this was a case that because of the magnitude of, like I said, that smoking gun audio, that it was really a clear cut case in terms of this was a case that she could take to trial, and it's possible that there was going to be a conviction in some form of fashion.
Wow. So what are you what are you based on things that you've reported on, things that you continue to find out, how do you see this ending up, Amir?
Yeah, I think things got tremendously harder once Trump became the president elect. I think once he becomes the president elect, it kind of makes things a little bit murkier in terms of her being able to or just anyone being able to prosecute Trump before 2029. I mean, we saw what happened with the federal case, and the federal case pretty much dismissing the case. And so we've seen that from time after time again that uh, Trump's ability to delay, put up
Yeah.
smoke screens it benefited him in a way that allowed him to escape any
Yeah, that was the game
prosecution.
plan for
I
him
think
anyway.
if that was the game plan and it worked, he stalled. There's a message, there's a thing where you run out the clock in football. You just run out the clock. And that's what he did. He was able to run out the clock in terms from a legal standpoint and create distractions. This was a big distraction in terms of who was Fonnie Willis having a relationship with. I mean, you had lawyers who were on the other side who were in relationships with other lawyers, and so we were trying to figure out
Right.
can lawyers have relationships with each other? So it's just a lot of confusion that they were able to put forth, and unfortunately, Fonnie Willis, she became she got the brunt of it. And what's interesting is that before this all took place, I actually wrote an article this morning about Fonnie Willis going to the court saying that she doesn't want the case dismissed. She wanted to move forward with the case, even with Trump being the president elect, because she said that a president elect isn't doesn't have immunity from
Yeah,
prosecution.
same thing Alvin Bragg in New
So
York
she
said.
was ready. Yeah, yeah. So she was ready to continue to move forward with this case and saying that that this is a case that still should go forward. And so after she made that motion yesterday, we get the Georgia Court of Appeals that that made this ruling this morning, saying that she would be disqualified from this case.
And before we let you go, Amir, thanks for jumping on. Let me ask you this. The sentiment about Fonnie Willis, the district attorney, um, now with this happening, with the disqualification, her disqualification in the Trump case, the massive loss in the YSL trial, which is another huge RICO trial, um, what's her approval rating like right now?
Well, I think that there's two different things, and I talk about this a lot with people from Atlanta. Is that it would have been easier to convict Trump than what it was going to be to convict Young Thug in the YSL case. It was easier. Like the Trump case was easier because the world saw that there was this collaborative effort to create this crime, right? For this crime to take place. Unfortunately, with the YSL case, it was kind of different. They weren't really organizing their crimes. They were just kind of young guys out committing, just being mischievous, and it wasn't organized in a sense where it's like it was going to be harder for her to tie in the YSL as a RICO because you just had too many loose ends in terms of these guys aren't really
Mhm.
organized. They're just
Allegedly,
criminals. They're just criminals, kind of just alleged. Well, some of the guys
plea
did
deals.
take
Yeah,
plea deals, and
yeah,
some guys did. So there are some individuals who are still in jail right now in the
right.
YSL case. But people from Atlanta, we always knew that it was going to be difficult to do the RICO against YSL versus the RICO against Trump because the Trump case was more clear cut in terms of the organized effort to get the 2020 election
Right.
overturned. We saw that effort from individuals across the nation, from Rudy Giuliani uh, to Merchant. We saw so many individuals who collaborated to try to overturn the 2020 election. And so when you think about that, in the RICO, and Fonnie Willis using the RICO to lump all of them together, I think she really had a case of stating that this was an organized criminal
Oh,
effort.
well, Amir, appreciate all the work you've done on this, and we appreciate you jumping on. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much for having me.
Appreciate it.
How about that? Yep.
So Lauren, I know. Well, I'm not going to say I know. I was going to say, was it a surprise at all that the court ruled the way it ruled in the Fonnie Willis?
I'm I'm surprised only because it's, I think, unprecedented. Has this ever happened before? How many times has this happened before? It's always the question when you see these things that you've never seen happen before. Of all the cases against Trump, I thought Fonnie Willis's case was the best case, the strongest case, no doubt about it. She was set up for a perfect challenge for, given the evidence that we already knew about in the public domain with regard to the recordings of the president asking to be sort of helped out on this vote in Georgia. She had the evidence, and there was really not much to say, right? So I thought she had a great case. Unfortunately, the thing with her acquaintance, the guy that she was working with, messed up this entire situation. You've got to be ready for that type of thing because we live in the political realm. And even though I don't think it has anything to do with the guilt and innocence of Donald Trump, it was something that I think if you're, adjudicating a case against the President of the United States in an era of misinfo and disinfo and informational warfare, you should be ready for almost anything, and
Yeah.
apparently they were not. But it doesn't surprise me that something unprecedented is happening because this is the age of Donald Trump and unprecedented things are happening every day.
And obviously, there's not going to be any trial in the next 4 years, obviously.
Mhm.
But is this case salvageable in any way?
It may be, but remember the Supreme Court effectively granted him sort of a writ of immunity.
Mhm.
And the reason, one of the big theories of the case that he's running for president is, in fact, to be immune from prosecution. In fact, I think that was a driving force. That and revenge. And I think we're seeing
Yes.
the part where he's immune, and then we're going to see the revenge in about a month. I mean, let's face it. The first move he's going to make on day one is to pardon everybody who violently attacked the U.S. Capitol and a bunch of U.S. Capitol Police officers, including my boyfriend, and all of the members of the D.C. Metropolitan Police who were there. Those people are going to be pardoned. And so people need to understand that this has real ramifications in terms of votes meaning things and elections having consequences. That's what we're about to see.
Yeah, as Jasmine Crockett so eloquently put it on X, he says now it's the find out stage we're going into.
Right, right,
um,
right.
it's really a shame. They have messed around and now they are going to find out. Um, Going back though, the final Willis, what was this court? And as Amir Shaw of the Atlanta Daily World mentioned, um, you had these Republican judges which shows you too another reason why the 2016 election was important and this particular election in 2020 was important as well. The judges, these are a lot of these judges on the federal bench have been appointed by none other than Donald Trump.
Yeah, and this is the reason why a lot of these judges are switching their decisions with regard to retirement because they don't want to give them a choice, and they know they're only going to be there for about he's only going to be there another 4 years. So they're hanging out for 4 years. A lot of these members of the Supreme Court who are likely to resign during Trump's era, that is likely to give Trump yet another 2 picks probably for the U.S. Supreme Court. So of course, Trump got to select a bunch of federal judges. This is what the big plan has been all along on the right with the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation and everybody else. They plan years and years ahead, and the Democratic Party needs to get serious because they're not planning years and years ahead. They're terrible at communication strategy, and they're terrible at long-term planning, and they're getting beat politically as a result.
Yeah. I noticed the question about the about Tish James and the cases in New York. Those cases have been adjudicated, but the question becomes what happens now. He's appealing both the cases. The Tish James case was the $500 million business fraud, and of course, the case in which he got convicted on 34 charges was the hush money case. And there, Alvin Bragg has argued that, listen, I understand about the Supreme Court immunity, but this was not official presidential acts.
Yeah, I really think that Tish James has been problematic to start out with that. Okay. You're a prosecutor. You need to keep your mouth shut about cases and people that you are prosecuting or the things that you're involved in legally, where you're supposed to have the justice is blind, banner over your head when you're doing this as a prosecutor or a legal professional who is an attorney general, in this case, Attorney General of New York. And I think Tish James has been way too political, way too talkative. And if you notice, Fonnie Willis and Alvin Bragg have not been that way. They've just been doing their thing, and the prosecutor for the Justice Department. So I think anything involving New York and anything near Tish James gets to get criticized, sometimes unfairly. And that's unfortunate, but you can't play politics. And on the right, they're calling it lawfare. And on some of these cases, on the stuff that she's involved in, I'm not sure they're incorrect. And I'm saying this as a person who feels like it's happened certainly to Democrats, particularly Black Democrats over the years. And, Marilyn Mosby being a perfect example, where people are prosecuted.
Pardon that, Lauren.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what they're waiting for, by the way. They seem to be waiting to do this pardon at the 11th hour. These
Do you
pardons,
think they're going to do it?
I don't know. But if you're doing preemptive pardons, I'm not sure why Marilyn Mosby can't get a pardon. If you're doing preemptive, particularly if you're Joe Biden and you're leaving politics and you're 82 years old, what does it matter? Use the power that you have, and there's nothing they can do about it. So if you're going to preemptively pardon Benny Thompson, which you should be doing,
Yes.
or Congressman Raskin or those people, which you should be doing, I'm not sure why Marilyn Mosby wouldn't be on the list. She clearly was targeted by a bunch of right-wing. Remember, she was one of the progressive prosecutors. You had the Freddie Gray case. She prosecuted some cops. The minute she did that is when the trouble started. The thing that she was prosecuted on was outrageous. Nobody else had been prosecuted on it. So there is lawfare out there on both sides, right and left. And it needs to stop, but it won't. It's going to accelerate for the next 4 years.
I have to ask too, Vice President Kamala Harris, do you think she's in the president's ear and saying, hey, I was a prosecutor too? I mean, you got to give Marilyn Mosby a break here.
I have no idea. And I don't know that you don't need the vice president, because you've already got Ben Crump and Angela Rye and several other people who, quite frankly, have been quite vocal. And if they don't hear those people, they haven't been paying attention. They make a good point. And if you know first of all, he pardoned his son. He pardoned Hunter Biden on the same concept, which was, I think, accurate. I think Hunter Biden,
100%.
If his name was Hunter Jones, none of that would have happened, right? And so all of a sudden he gets prosecuted. Okay, so that had a political edge to it. But I think the Democrats have to admit that their effort, and I don't think it was collective, like I don't think they all got into a room and planned it. But I think if Donald Trump was a real estate guy that never ran for president, was never going to run for president again, none of the stuff that we've been seeing would have happened. At least some of it would not have happened. The documents case, there is a case there, but it's something that's rare to go after. And certainly the thing in New York, like I said, the over talkative Tish James was a problem. I don't care what anyone says.
I'm sorry, Lauren. Don't you think that? Yeah, don't you think that all of these prosecutions did, because you're right, the documents, every president just about took documents home illegally, right? I mean, whether they knew or they did not know, we saw the reports. Biden, Obama, Bush,
Right.
they all had then they returned them. Trump,
Right.
he didn't return them. He refused to return them for whatever reason, right? Which made it more of a problem. But I believe that a lot of if not all of these prosecutions stem from the fact that this guy, he instigated a riot on the U.S. Capitol, and folks believed that he needed to pay.
Well, then prosecute him for treason, then, which to me is what it fell under. It was treason, but nobody wanted to use the word treason for some reason. But at any rate, yeah, sure. He effectively instigated insurrection on the U.S. Capitol, our democracy, on the day of the certification of Joe Biden. No coincidence, no nothing. He did word it carefully up there, but still, it came close enough to me. Certainly had that been, I remember that when that Million Man March 1 and 2 happened, if Louis Farrakhan had gotten up there at Million Man March 2 and said, hey, everybody, let's attack the U.S., let's go to the U.S. Capitol and attack it. Like, obviously, that would have been called treason. Somehow with Donald Trump, it's always different.
The fact that it took a committee to gather Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney and everybody to gather and take, a year and a plus to and hand
Right.
hand over to the DOJ, like, here's what you should have been doing, really.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I think that I really think that, frankly, the problem with what happens is that the Democrats are not smart enough to plan things out when they go wrong, right? So you knew that if this guy goes back in office, you're going to have to deal with him, and so now they have no plan for that. You notice they have no plan for anything, and they're
Right.
making it up as they go. And Mark Elias is the only person that I see waging any sort of war on Trump or saying anything, and he's pretty much it. Chuck Schumer, I think, needs to retire and
Yep.
is just not up to the task. They just did a strange thing where, and I actually like Jerry Connolly. I know Jerry Connolly, and Jerry Connolly is actually a good messenger. He's not somebody that stays silent. The stuff coming through his social media is very, very good. But there ain't nobody in this country that I know of that messages as well on the Democratic side as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Oh
She has an 8
gosh.
million person following on her Instagram, 8 million people, and the Democratic Party can't figure out a way to put her in a leadership role. It just makes no sense
Yeah, when
whatsoever.
she joined Blue Sky, she automatically had like 3 million.
Right.
And,
I mean,
and Blue Sky barely had 3 million people at
right. Right.
at that
Right.
time.
And the Democrats figure out a way not to elevate her to a leadership position. This is not a slap against Connolly, but it's just a statement of figure something out. You made a position up for Jim Clyburn. You can make a position up for somebody that's got 8 million followers. She knows how to communicate. Whether you love her or hate her, or you think she's too. Actually, her being left wing really has nothing to do with anything on oversight, because oversight isn't really about that type of ideological
Mhm.
warfare. It's about specific cases and the government and how the government works and all that. So I'm just shocked that the Democrats, they lose an election and learn absolutely nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And you're putting, like you said, the AOC situation. How do you
Mhm,
put a guy over her, Nancy Pelosi? We talked about it on the morning show, um, on Thursday morning.
mhm.
Nancy Pelosi whips up these votes for this old man who has been fighting health problems, serious health problems at
Mhm.
that, against AOC. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, an esophageal cancer diagnosis. But you know what? I'm always a believer. I'm not a big believer in saying age, means anything. I mean, because Maxine Waters and Pelosi herself, Bernie Sanders, they're good messengers, and they're in their 80s, 70s, and 80s. And so it really depends on what person we're talking about. Okay. I think Connolly is good, but it is substantive to me. And certainly, as somebody who had to deal with breast cancer 4 years ago, it's substantive to me to hear that you got a cancer diagnosis, particularly for esophageal, which is a particularly difficult one. Not to say any of them are easy, but that one is kind of like a difficult one. And depending what stage, and I don't know what the stage is, and really it's none of my business. But I do think that whether he got a cancer diagnosis or not, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is one of the best political messengers in the country. That cannot be denied, and I just cannot believe that they decided that, and she didn't lose by a little bit; she lost by a lot.
No.
So I'm saying to myself, really, Democratic Party in the House, you are out of your minds. I mean, we knew it was coming when Jasmine Crockett lost to Debbie Dingell for the messaging piece. I mean, I thought, okay, again, I might not agree with every little thing that Jasmine Crockett does, but I know this. Her style is a lot closer to what's needed in the Democratic Party than what I'm seeing from everybody else. I mean, she's got a stronger style, a more to the point style, and a more current digital strategic style that is used in today's communications when you talk about TikTok and YouTube and everything else. And she's damn good, and so is AOC. So again, it's not age, because I think, Maxine Waters was doing great during the first Trump administration, and she was in her 80s then. She was in her late 70s then. So I mean, it's not age per se; it's how you do it and the strength that you bring to it. You could be any age. So,
Yeah.
but one thing I know is Jasmine Crockett and AOC are quite good. So I don't know what the heck happened there.
The other thing about Donald Trump,
Mhm.
I wanted to get your thoughts on too. He sued ABC News. They made a settlement that is just upsetting the industry, but he's planning to sue other reporters and content creators. Talk about that, if you will.
I think so. What I think
Mhm.
that, first of all, I have an unusual view of this because I watched Justin Fairfax sue CBS and effectively NPR in New York. And he lost both cases, couldn't get by the motion to dismiss. And with regard to the ABC case, the the layout of the ABC case is very familiar to the layout of Justin's case with regard to WNYC in New York. Again, effectively NPR in New York, and Melissa Harris Perry's show, The Takeaway, in which somebody comes on and uses the R word for the first time in the story against Justin. Sort of the same thing that Stephanopoulos did, or very similar to what Stephanopoulos did on the air. What I think happened is Bob Iger threw his hands up. Bob Iger and the general counsel of ABC threw their hands up and gave Trump a gift. That's what I think just happened. They would have won on the law. It is extremely unusual that a news organization, because of the Time Sullivan malice standard, loses a defamation case. And they bailed out and didn't even get to summary judgment. I mean, they just basically said, okay, let's give him $15 million. I mean, like, that for me was shocking. And
$15 million.
when it comes to defamation, that's almost impossible as a politician who, by the way, has already been defamed many times and has a bad reputation, I would argue, just generally. So the idea that you're defaming Trump, I mean, Trump is already defamed, right? So it's sort of interesting to watch that happen. ABC, I think, threw their hands up.
He wants to, Trump has talked in the past about eliminating those type of protections that you speak about when it comes to the media.
Mhm.
Do you believe now he will have the momentum to do that?
Yeah, I do. I think Time Sullivan is going to go down within the next 4 years. I'm surprised it didn't go down. They were looking for a case. Realize you have Brett Kavanaugh sitting there, who knows what it's like to be accused of something and humiliated in front of the entire country. And whether you believe that it's true or not, you have to ask the question, is that the way we should handle such a serious question of sexual violence? I would argue no. Okay. Those things should be investigated by professionals that do sexual violence investigations, not the court of public opinion, which is what these attorneys are doing, which is what we see in the Jay-Z case right now, and certainly what we saw with Justin Fairfax. So, I think Time Sullivan is going to go down, and people can whine all they want, but these media people don't understand what it feels like to get the phone call from the New York Times or the Washington Post that eventually ends up destroying your entire public reputation and your entire life. I know it's easy to sit in the newsroom over on 8th Avenue and on K Street at the Washington Post because those people have never gotten that phone call, okay? And they're making those phone calls and having absolutely no idea, Cameron Barr and Mike Semmel at the Washington Post, that you're destroying somebody's life, and sometimes without investigation, Stephanie Saul at the New York Times, where you're just doing this and it's all because of Me Too and we have to believe women and all this other stuff without investigation. And by the way, a few hours ago, we got the news that Andrew Cuomo, the former governor of New York, is suing somebody who accused him that was put on the front cover of the New York Times with no evidence behind anything that she was saying. You have to have some evidence. And in most cases, you do have it. Somebody texts their friend right after and says, hey, you're not going to believe the crazy thing that this person just did to me. That's what happened in the Moonves case when Ronan Farrow had some great evidence. That's what happened in the Weinstein case. And Jody Cantor and Megan Twohey did great reporting exposing Harvey Weinstein. So I'm not saying sexual violence isn't a problem. It is. Some of this reporting has been excellent and Pulitzer Prize worthy. And some of it has been terrible and tragic and has destroyed people for absolutely no reason.
Yeah. And before we let you go, Lauren, your thoughts on Elon Musk demanding that the government shut down. Obviously, this is an Elon Musk call. Trump said that he listened to Musk on this, and he believes that the government should shut down.
Elon Musk has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. He is an Afrikaner. Yeah, he's an illegal immigrant to our country who's an Afrikaner who has no idea what he's talking about. He has no idea how the U.S.
He's an African American. How about that?
Yeah, right. Sure. And what we're going to see is a collision, because I know that Donald Trump, with his big ego, is not going to let this go on too much longer. He'll let it go on for a little bit. But I know if I know my Donald Trump is going to show up and slap this guy down at some point. But right now, they're letting him run his big mouth. It will collide. The government probably will shut down because I don't think they're going to figure it out before Friday night. And so, but this is what this is what they put into place. We're going to be watching this for 4 years, and we need to pace ourselves because it doesn't get any better from here.
And of course, Mike Johnson, how much longer for him as speaker?
I don't know, but if they want to be stupid and put somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene in there, let them have that. The Democrats should sit back like this with their arms folded. I
And
mean,
that's pretty much what Hakeem Jeffries said.
right.
What you're doing right now. He said,
Mhm, mhm.
we're
Yeah.
gonna stand down.
Hey, you wanna act as if this is easy. We already knew before these lunatics showed up. And when I say lunatics, I'm talking about Vivek Ramaswamy, who's another dum-dum, and of course Elon Musk, who made all his money off of government subsidies, our tax money, by the way, and then wants to cut Medicaid and Social Security so they can give a tax break to billionaires. Okay. What's going to happen is a backlash to what they're doing. It's the same thing. It's a repeat of 2018. So 2017, Trump comes into office, and then everything starts to flip back over in 2018. Obviously, the Democrats win the House back. I mean, we're just going to see that again.
Over and over again.
Unfortunately, the presidency lasts 4 years, though. But half of Trump's power will be taken away 2 years from now. So, because this is what they're going to do. They think they're funny. They think this is games. This is people's lives, and they're going to pay a political price for it.
But yeah, and real quick, and certainly, I just wanted to be clear, not advocating any type of violence, any type of things like this. But do you fear that you could see with these politicians from Trump on down, and folks like Elon, et cetera, like you said, they're playing with people's lives. We
Mhm.
saw, and we continue to see this groundswell of support for that young man who shot and killed the healthcare executive,
Mhm.
because we're talking about people's lives, right?
Right.
Again, we are not advocating that at all. We think that if you do something like that, you need to be locked away, give the severe penalties possible. But
Mhm.
are these politicians setting themselves up for same type of retaliation?
Well, what Luigi Mangione did was wrong. He murdered somebody on the sidewalk in New York, who I would argue certainly an executive for a company that certainly has denied the healthcare claims of many people. That's hard to deal with. That is hard to deal with, but we don't really know the details of what his exact ideology was with regard to how he ran United Healthcare. So it's hard to comment on that, but we do know that United Healthcare had one of the highest claim denial rates of all the big healthcare companies. I think people get frustrated, but it's hard to tell whether Luigi Mangione really thought out what he was doing, or does he have a screw loose? I have to believe that he has a screw loose to have taken out somebody in such a way, and you basically are destroying your life and somebody else's. At the same time, I think the reaction should not be all that shocking to anybody. We have a for-profit healthcare system in the United States. All these other civilized nations and industrialized nations do not have that. England, France, Germany, they do not have that. So, it's just like our legal system. You get the justice that you can pay for, and you get the health care that you can pay for in this country. You might be innocent of something and not be able to defend yourself because you can't hire an attorney, and you get like a legal aid attorney who's not as good, and you lose a case or you plead out because of money. If that is not justice, and the same thing with the healthcare system, you die because you're not covered. You die because you don't have the job that gives you health care. So I get the anger behind what the Luigi Mangione situation, even though it was wrong what he did. I understand why people are having the reaction. I think people should be very, very careful not to ignore that. If you notice, our elected officials, for the most part, are ignoring that. That's a huge mistake, because we're about to see a lot more of that when these guys go after Social Security and the Affordable Care Act. So the Trump administration is going to go after Social Security and the Affordable Care. So let's see what happens after that. If you thought that was shocking, get ready, because we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah. Wow. As always, Lauren Burke, we appreciate you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks a lot for having me. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks to Lauren Burke and to Amir Shah of the Atlanta Daily World for bringing some really insightful stuff on these Trump cases, and, of course, the pending government shutdown. We'll see you again next week. Thanks for watching Let It Be Known.